This is firefighter Raphael Porriette reminding you that every day a portion of every Firehouse Subs purchase goes towards helping first responders. Try the new pastrami Reuben, loaded with hot pastrami, sweet and tangy slaw, and melted Swiss. For a limited time, get a medium pastrami Reuben for just $6.39. Firehouse Subs. Enjoy more subs, save more lives. Limited time offer at participating locations. Firehouse Subs will donate a minimum of $1 million in 2018 to the Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation by donating 0.13% of every purchase.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this latest edition of Damn You Hollywood. I am Robert Winfree, and tonight we're going to be tackling, Ready Player One, Steven Spielberg's adaptation of the novel of the same name that was a giant nostalgia trip for anyone born roughly about the same time I was. That's what we got this week. I don't have a whole lot of gimmicks for the opening to this moment. Sorry about that. I don't have it around. Sorry, didn't think it through about this one. But fortunately for you all, I'm not alone. I have with me my usual partner in crime, and who is, in his own right, fed up all of this nonsense. He is virtually mortified. Mark Radulich. How you doing, Mark?
Hello, sir. How are you? Technical difficulties aside, and I am very excited to be doing this review. I actually have things to say about this movie. If this wasn't the usual, shiny things and special effects, it's wonderful, 100%. This is not going to be that kind of review, Robert Winfree. I have critical things to say, believe it or not.
Uh-huh. I'll believe it when I hear it.
All right.
Okay. It really be credible. Come on.
When I first walked out of there, I was like, "Oh, that's fun." You know, as usual, I asked my kids what did they think, and my daughter thought it was funny when the one kid said, "Ninjas don't hug." That was her big takeaway. My son's big takeaway was I thought Mario was in this, as in, Mario and Luigi. Sure. And as long as this movie was as hard as it was a little bit for him to follow, he liked King Kong and he only had to go to the bathroom once. So overall, it was a successful outing for the Radulich family. But why don't we go ahead and introduce our guest?
Yeah, go for it. Because this is my life now. Go ahead.
All right, so friend of the network and someone with whom we share content with. He's the I don't know what your title is. I was going to call you president because I was just taking a guess. But he's the something or other for the Wrestling to the Max podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, our good friend Sean Garmer. How do you do, sir?
How are you guys doing? Always a fan of y'all's content, of course, and just I am the co-host of the Wrestling to the Max podcast. So we basically, Gary and I share it together. We started the whole thing. It started the whole network and everything else we do.
Until one of you stabs the other one in the back and takes the whole thing public and your shares in the thing plummet? Is that how that works?
Oh, I hope not.
I mean, that is usually how those things go, if nothing else.
That's a Facebook joke, ladies and gentlemen. It's also a joke from the social network. Anyway. All right. Well, it's good to have you here, Sean.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Anything to spare me from Mark.
Oh, shut up.
To be fair, that does work both ways. Like,
so, Sean, you, I always like to know when people actually reach out to us and say, "Hey, I've heard your show, and despite that, I actually want to be on it."
It does make me question the higher functioning, the brain level brain levels.
Yeah, I have to
brain activity.
I usually have to take a moment and go, "Really? Okay, sure." What brought you to the dance, sir? I'm guessing huge fan of the movie and all of that, and the source material. But what specifically made you hot to trot to come on here and talk about Ready Player One?
Well, I did see the movie over the weekend, and obviously, being a huge gamer and all that stuff and fan of the pop culture, I kind of felt like I knew what I was getting into. And then I watched the movie and I enjoyed it. And then I'm halfway through the book right now, so I figured it's an interesting perspective to bring.
All right.
Okay, so of the three of us, the only one who's really read the book all the way through it.
That is correct, for Vernon.
All right. I know you're a Nazi. We get it.
No, but I'll tell you what, though. I was sent from presidential candidate for the Democrat Party, Andrew Yang, sent me his book, The War on Normal People, and we might be getting to interview him. Well, I might be getting to interview him next week. So I will read something that isn't a comic book. So there.
Yeah, instead you read socialist crap. All right, fair enough.
The basic income guarantee is the future. But speaking of the future, why don't you give us a synopsis of Ready Player One?
The future in 200 years when we fully automated everything and have AI that's actually tried to wipe us out at least twice. Until that point, it's a pipe dream.
This is what I put up with every week, Sean. Do you feel my pain?
I feel your pain a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, I am the lone sane person. It's okay. I've been known to have that effect on people.
All right, Mr. Sane Person, why don't you do your synopsis?
All right, before jumping quite into that, Mark, I have to ask you something about this particular film being on the list for, being on our review list this week. I can't formulate sentences today for some reason.
You're really off your game. Do we need to stop and start again? Do you need to go get a stretch?
No, I'm good. It's best to just work through it.
Okay.
If I stopped and restarted, I'd basically wind up here where I am. It's better to just kind of plow through this.
Speaking of plowing through, what's your question?
If Steven Spielberg had not directed this, would you have put it on the schedule?
Yes.
Really?
Ready Player One. Look, I haven't read the book. I was born in 1976, not 1986. But I'm aware of the pop cultural significance of the novel. I'm aware of... I mean, Sean Comer talked to me about this book a couple of years ago and was like, "Oh, I can't wait for when they finally get the movie out." So if this didn't make the infamous Radulich and Broadcasting Network schedule because it's a Steven Spielberg movie. I mean, the BFG was a Spielberg movie too, and we all know how that ended up.
Financial disaster, but actually somewhat of a critical success, if memory serves.
Critical schmitical. Ready Player One would have made the list because it was deigned to be a blockbuster, regardless of who was directing it, but also because of its science fiction and fantasy worth.
All right, good to know that. I'm trying to get a fix on how you. I mean, I know you have the basics. We discussed the basics of how you apply videos to the schedule, and then I mean, you must have this tremendous amount of, since you've started scheduling these things out a year in advance, the empathy you feel for those Sean Shelby over at the UFC trying to get a card to stay together must be tremendous.
My heart actually broke for you. I was considering coming to Utah to let you rest your head on my shoulder when I saw the Nurmagomedov Tony Ferguson fight had once again fallen apart.
Nah, I expected it to fall through. I say that without gimmick. Like, that fight is cursed. It will never. It will happen like 8 years from now in Bellator. That's just how that's going to go.
Okay. But yes, there is an algorithm that I apply to picking movies. And I am trying to open this up a little bit more, speaking of novel adaptations, to more adaptations of novels. Like, if there were more time in the schedule for us to fit a few more movies in there, there are a couple of novel adaptations that I saw that are coming out in the next 2 years that I was looking at and said, okay, well, maybe these would be fun movies to review, and they exist in the science fiction fantasy realm. Problem is, we're sharing the schedule also with TV releases and other things that are going on, so some stuff just has to get cut. But this didn't.
I get that. I'm also, again, like, I understand the basics. I'm also trying to figure out the nuance. You know, like, we have the broad strokes. I am now trying to figure out the subtleties that go into how you decide these things, and then, you know, I get to laugh at you a little bit more when they shift around what release dates at the last possible minute, because it amuses me. All right. What?
I was about to say, Sean, do you feel my pain whenever you get those announcements about the, we've, hey, remember these movie releases? Yeah, we've shifted them to another year, and I want to throw things around my house.
Yep, I get that with games all the time, because I'm sitting here getting ready. Every month I have to get ready for what games I'm going to have to ask a publisher for or whatever, and they go, oh, this got delayed like 4 months, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Great.
Well, that got scratched off there.
It's like it's like the puppet from Crank Yankers. Your clipboard goes over your shoulder one way, the pencil the other.
I mean, to be fair, Mark, there's a degree of this that you bring on yourself. You still think Gambit's a thing.
It's gonna come out. I swear it.
Uh-huh. I mean, you're reaching like flat Earth levels of delusion about this. I just want to point that out.
That movie's not coming out.
Oh my God. Well, Sean, it was nice having you on the show.
All right, we've hit about our 10 minutes of just random BS time. So moving on to the actual plot synopsis for Ready Player One. Here's your warning, everyone. I'm gonna tell you what happens. If you don't want to know, that's your warning. I fundamentally hate that I have to give those. Like, people are just that stupid. But all right. Anyway, moving on. We are talking about, again, Ready Player One. I will go over differences between film and novel if necessary later on in the show. We open with voiceover narration, because who doesn't love that? The film is set in the future, 2045. Yes. Who wrote this? This plot synopsis is terribly written. God damn it. All right. Anyway, our primary character that we follow is a kid by the name of Wade Watts. He introduces us to the basic texture of the world as it exists, again, 30 years in the future. I'm saying 30, just that's what I'm going with. I know it's not exact. When life revolves around a virtual reality sort of portal to the internet they refer to as the OASIS. It's actually a acronym. I almost said initialization, but you can pronounce it, so it's an acronym. And sets up the central conflict, which is a quest to become the ruler of the OASIS. This has become the pervasive thing. It is essentially the next iteration of the internet. And the people who created it just had a very pure vision for it, nearly neurotically so. And when one of the creators, in fact, the guy who owned everything, died, rather than leave his holdings in the form of a will, or a trust, like a normal person, devised an elaborate series of games within the OASIS, and the first person to successfully complete all of them inherits these, $1 trillion, it's not even a currency, it's like a...
Funny money?
My brain is for... No. It commodity. It's like $1 trillion commodity that he will be able to inherit and then run as sees fit, because Lord knows giving teenagers that kind of power is a good idea. It's not.
You're on
spoiler.
one editorialization. You have two left.
That's one.
Yep.
That's one.
Strike one.
Help and keep count. Anyway, that's the central conflict, and the character of Waithe is very invested in trying to figure out and trying to get the ultimate Easter egg, and it also deals with his like general casting for meaning in life, but I don't want to get too metaphorical yet.
That's two.
No, it's not. That's actually goes towards the structure of the story. It's not. I'm not editorializing. The first task that you have to complete in order to obtain a key to eventually again become ruler of the OASIS is a race that nobody can finish. Utilizing clues from his obsessive research and study of this individual's life, the character's name is Halliday. He discovers that, well, instead of racing, I should just put my car in reverse. I'm going to drive backwards, and oh look, I found a quick route through the maze. Basically, this works. Yay! Other people start figuring it out. We move on. Again, there's 3 of these things that have to be completed. After successfully completing the first one, he encounters, well, sort of while he's completing it, he encounters another character by the name of Artemis, who's violently opposed to the evil corporate entity, IOI, which is employing like hundreds of people to do nothing but try and figure out where this Easter egg is so they can find it, and then alter the model under which the OASIS operates. They're going to have different levels of membership. They're going to sell advertisement space over your field of vision. There's actually a great line that our evil corporatist speaks at one point that says, "We estimate we can cover 80% of a user's vision before we induce a seizure." And as Waithe is kind of, again, he's worked hard on this, but he's not invested necessarily beyond, again, not really having much else to do with his life. Once he starts unraveling things, he becomes targeted by, again, this IOI corporation, which tries to blow him up. In fact, it blows up the last remaining family he has. He is saved from soon-to-be annihilation by this loosely knit group. Again, kind of led by Artemis. We get a bunch of adventures in both the real world and the OASIS. There's a trip through the Shining, which is great. There's, again, that key is found. There's conflict. Artemis gets captured near the end of this. I don't want to go into the minutia of like how they get her out because it's not terribly relevant, but this all culminates in a giant battle on the steps of this fortress where the final challenge awaits, which is playing through the game called Adventure from the old Atari, like 2700 or something. I forget the
26.
The specific 26, whatever. Close enough. It's an Atari.
We have a games professional on the website. Get it together, buddy.
I don't care. Like, I was genuinely surprised there was more than one model of Atari when I discovered that. Like, really?
I'm sorry he's hurting you, Sean.
It's okay. I'm trying not to weep here.
You may as well start now, because it only gets worse. There's this giant battle. The end result is a cataclysmic device being set off that kills everyone. Bear in mind, kills all their avatars, so they would have to restart. Actually, I think the nature of that particular item is different. It doesn't just cause you to lose your stuff and zero out. It actually like eliminates the avatar, and you have to start completely from scratch. Because it wipes everyone who was on the scoreboard off of the scoreboard, whereas previously just, zeroing out and dying hadn't done that. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm now like putting more thought into that whole sequence than the people who made it. Wade's character is saved because he won a bet with the curate with another character that actually resulted in him getting a quarter, which is worth an extra life. Because arcade games, see, it's a callback. He successfully completes the adventure issue, is awarded with his reward. They are able to completely force the restructuring and I think like inevitable shutdown of IOI, and we all live happily ever after is kind of the crux of that. Okay. Mark, did I overlook anything? Did I give anything too short a shrift during that synopsis?
Well, the conclusion gets into a whole thing where they actually try to murder Wade in real life. Just important to know that. And this ends
they already
with
tried to. They already did try to murder him in real life. So the fact that the final sequence is not only it doesn't only take place in the Oasis. There's also there's also like a mediocre car chase and like giant douchebag thinking about going at Wade with a gun. It's a thing. It's a whole thing. I'll talk about that in a bit, but yeah, there is that. So again, it is not only virtual. There is real world peril that is imposed on our intrepid band of heroes.
All right, I'm good with that.
All right, then where would you like to start with this? Where do you want to?
All right, so here's the kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly from me, and then let's get Sean's opinion here. But for me, much like the preceding movie, Pacific Rim Uprising, the star of this thing is not Tye Sheridan; it's the CGI. When
they're in the Oasis, yes.
Yeah, when they're in the Oasis. If the Oasis doesn't look good, the movie fails on its face. That's the star, that's the leading attraction. And I thought Spielberg and the hundreds of thousands of animators that created the Oasis on screen did a really good job of immersing you in that world. And I was definitely, and I'll tell you, the first race sequence, the very first one where they take you through the entire race right up to King Kong swatting the cars left and right,
nobody gets by Kong.
Is phenomenal. It is probably my favorite part of the movie from just a visual perspective. I know, very early on, it was still very early on in the movie, so my kids were still into it. And I remember, like, as squirmy as my son can be at these movies, he didn't move a muscle during that thing and thought it was the coolest thing ever. They really did a great job of creating a vibrant action sequence in that scene. And there's some other really fun things they do throughout the movie. So I think the number one thing they had to get right, if nothing else, was the Oasis and how it looks and operated. And I think they succeeded there. Here's my major problem with the film. I thought about this after I walked out. I said, visually, I thought this was a great spectacle. But from a structural standpoint, from a movie, I thought there were some real, I don't know if they're critical failures, because I think you can still watch the movie and be entertained. But I never got a sense of the stakes in the world. I never got a sense of how that world operated. They kind of just glossed over it. To the point where if you don't just accept the fact that this is what he does, this is what everybody does, and, how he eats, goes to school, any of that, none of that's important. I know it's covered in the book, but it's not covered very well in the film. See, here's the thing. If you're going to tell me it's a dystopian future where they have to stack trailers on top of one another for whatever the reasons are. First of all, I would love to know what those reasons are. But still, it was
population density.
But even still,
they do an extraordinarily poor job of actually explaining it.
Well, that's the thing. It's like he says, people started to move to Columbus, Ohio because of the Oasis. It's a virtual thing. You don't have to move anywhere. And if there was a better,
you get better connection speed.
But that's the thing, is they don't do a really good job of explaining why in the movie people amass in that one area. Again, it's just
why do people mass?
I
mean, to be fair, like, why do people mass anywhere?
Okay, so if we could keep with the film, Like, you're arguing with me just to argue. So,
A little bit.
so again, but there's a greater problem at stake. Is there's like, well, people. This is what happened when people stop deciding to solve problems and just live through them. What problems? How, a couple of lines of dialogue and maybe a few flashes to how the world got to be the way that it was and how it currently functions that makes being in this virtual escape that much better. Because here's the thing. I never got a sense of what kind of hell he was living in. Yeah, he's living on top of people. Have you been to the projects in New York City? People live on top of people. They've been doing it since the New Deal. This isn't new. So, he just, nothing happens to him between the time that he gets out of his trailer and heads on over to the junk pile where his rig is. And I know you meet the real-life characters later on in the movie, but again, there needed to be some time spent in the grit of this world to really contrast why you would just assign yourself over to a virtual paradise. Black Mirror does a really good job of this sort of thing, but when they did it, the person's choice was death. So, you didn't need much more of an explanation, but, there are real-world consequences to living in a virtual reality. I needed to see more of that in the movie, other than we like to play video games and we live on top of one another. And, the movie becomes about this Easter egg hunt. And you get a sense of what it means to this kid that the OASIS be what it has been. But again, I didn't, and maybe this is just me, maybe this isn't a structural thing of the film, this might just be my own sense of how things were, but I didn't get a strong sense of the real world stakes if the OASIS went away. I got personal stakes. He liked his video game. He liked his escape from his shitty life, as he's told us, because I didn't quite see what was shitty about it, other than the one boyfriend. But still, I never got a sense in the movie. I could infer things, but I never got a sense in the movie that if if IOI got a hold of the OASIS and fundamentally changed the way that it worked and how it affected the average person, what that does to the greater world. So that leaves you with this kid's own, as I said before, this kid's own personal stake in what's going on. And if you're not entirely enraptured by the character, then his personal stakes don't resonate nearly as loudly as they should. And to tell you how much this character resonated with me, I thought the kid playing him was the kid who played Mr. Fantastic in Fan Four Stick. Like I had.
Oh no! He is so much better than Miles Teller.
I thought Tye Sheridan
is just a blight.
I thought Tye Sheridan and Miles Teller were the same guy. Okay, that's how it's funny. You said what his name was, and I just wanted to yell out Whitey McMilktoast.
I believe that's what's on his birth certificate. Miles Teller is his stage name.
Another problem I had with the movie is, other than the annoying, this is a personal thing, but it was kind of annoying that you have Artemis who says, "Oh, if you met me in real life, you wouldn't like me," and her big objection to him, or her big thing is she has a birthmark over her eye. I don't want to get off on a tangent, but I know men. And I'm pretty sure not a man on earth would have cared about that. No one.
You see, Mark, much like you, I know men, and I would go with 80% would not care.
90%. 98%. Sure, 2% of the model-looking men out there who look for equal or better perfection, maybe, but that's only 2%.
I might go
especially
slightly
the
higher
type of
than
men
that.
that would be watching this movie. They would not give a total crap about
no
her having a scar over her face. They'd just be happy as hell that a girl that looked that good was talking to them in the first place.
Exactly, and was in the same zip code. Yeah, if you're going to make that big of a deal of it and that much of a point, there needed to be something else wrong with her. I looked at that and I'm like, oh, come on, Hollywood. Damn you, Hollywood.
Hang on. To be fair, that's more how that's also meant to be more how she feels about herself. So when we look at it, it's like, no, this is clearly not a big deal. Like, none of us care.
That doesn't make for a winning character for me, though, because, again... all right. Like I said, I didn't want to get off on a tangent on women's self-esteem and all of that. This isn't the place for it, and boy, are we not the people that discuss it. So moving on.
I think that gets back into the world-building thing, like you were talking about, though. Is she does hint at the fact that she didn't have the greatest life, but you don't really know anything about it. So,
right.
I mean, unless you read the book, you don't really know anything about it. So, that whole why she feels that way about herself is more because of that than necessarily because of her looks or
right.
Or
and if they had done
they don't explain that. So
right, and if they had done a better job of fleshing out her character and instead of making her just as bland as her avatar, therein lies the problem. But my bigger problem with her and that entire subplot of Welcome to the Revolution is
oh god. No, it's not. I mean, like, it is fundamentally not a revolution.
But that's the thing.
There's nothing in power that you are attempting to overthrow. Like,
but that's the thing. It's like she's like, "Welcome to the rebellion," and it's like, okay, and then they kind of have a moment, and the whole thing just goes to pieces after that. Like, what are they? You never get a sense of what the Empire is doing to the world. The Empire that is IOI in this case. That there would need to be a ground level rebellion.
I would disagree on that point, though, because they do mention that basically the entire world has gone to shit and that everybody has immersed themselves into this game because their lives are so shitty. So think about if they took away your favorite thing that you always do, what happens to you? And you have no other recourse because there's nothing else great about this world. Mm-hmm. What's going to happen to you? So
it's said in the film, and I don't disagree with you. Don't you think they could have done a better job of showing that, this being a film?
I agree. I do agree with you. And this is what bothers me, too, is we are used to now with all these Marvel films and a lot of films in general, these films at least going 2.5 hours. Like, would it have killed the movie to spend 25 more minutes using that time at the beginning to really explain, like the book does, which I understand a book has a lot more exposition it can give you and all that stuff, of explaining why the world is the way it is, why the stacks are the way they are, what's the big deal about.
I would have settled for a brief economics discussion. I mean literally that's all it would have taken.
Right.
I would have
explain the relationship between coins in game to real world currency.
Well,
because there actually is a correlation.
How about a wide cityscape shot of Columbus, Ohio, and a time lapse of 20 years of what happened to this city as the narrator kind of walks you through everything. And as far as the exposition argument, it's not that I don't hear you, but when I hear what you're saying, Sean, I think, well, Lord of the Rings did it just fine. Now, granted, those were 3-hour movies, and there were 3 of them. But even if you just take, let's say, the first of the Hobbit trilogy movies, or the Fellowship of the Ring, there's a lot of exposition in both of those movies that comes out of the book, and they handled them just fine. I definitely had a sense of how Middle-earth operates in both those movies with the amount of exposition shown in the movie. So it's up to the writer and the director to go ahead and do that. And I feel like they took the old Kevin Smith phrase of "we just want to get to the mall" a little too literally. It was like, look, nobody's only you stupid film critics, want properly structured films with fleshed out characters and and proper world building. Everybody else just came to see the Oasis in action. Okay.
Well, yeah, it had to be Spielberg knocking stuff down because the actual author of the book is one of the writers.
So there you go. So ultimately, those are my big. I mean, and I'll open up the discussion to you guys. As you know, you've already weighed in a little bit, but I want to kick the ball around a little bit. So we'll go to Sean next. So those are my major complaints and likes about the movie. Loved the Oasis look. Thought there were a lot of structural problems with a lot of the world building, and the characters were Blandy McBlandison. Sean?
Yeah, I definitely think that the Oasis is the star. It's no doubt that it's the star. It is what you're there to see. They obviously made it to where you're there to have an exciting time and not really think too much about what's going on. Otherwise, the story plot is the same. Almost felt like one of those like 90s kids movies. You've seen this a million times. It's not anything special. Whether you get into the character, go ahead.
My brother has a perspective on the book that I tend to agree with, in that Ernest Cline wanted to write about all these pop culture things, and then after assembling that, he just found the most bare bones actual plot vehicle to convey the narrative.
Yeah, he did. Because that's another thing, is much like what the book does, this is a reference fest. And if you get all the references, you will love this movie. If you don't get any of the references, this movie will be as bland as toast to you. It's true, though. If you don't understand, like, when all these, like, cool stuff happens, and then the nice thing is they don't just make it about the 80s. There is stuff from, Overwatch is in it. There's, like, Master Chief shows up at certain at the battle at the end. I mean, like, so I did appreciate that. They didn't just, like, the book does it a lot more where it's all about 80s because it's more about Halliday's love for the 80s and all that stuff. But everything that they do in the movie involving the Oasis, the whole thing with the library and getting to see his thoughts and everything that he went through in his life, like, that's actually pretty cool. Like, I thought, it was like, man, I wonder if I would have had a cool enough life where I could actually have my entire... everything I ever did put into a whole library, like how amazing that would be. But, I almost felt like you have to just kind of take this movie for what it is and not sit there and think so much about, oh God, look at all these things it's not doing right or whatever, because you can like over critique it to a point and you almost don't enjoy it.
Yeah, this does definitely fall into the category. If you think too hard about this movie, you will not enjoy it. All right, Winfree. I normally say this about a critic, but I know that this is a movie whose ass you want to kick around the block. So get to kicking.
Not really, actually.
No.
I want to say this. Like, my big negative for this. Well, sorry, this isn't the big negative as it pertains to the film. This is more my big negative from watching it. The CGI in the Oasis is brilliant. There's two parts of CGI when they're in the real world that are just bad. There's the first one's comical. It's when they're explaining the technology that makes the Oasis possible, and he does the on like the omnidirectional treadmill, and it looked so bad. It was almost like one of those like clip art things where we're going to take his face and just put it over someone else's body as they. It was almost comical. And I think if you happen to see it again, just pay attention to that moment because it's I laughed. Like it amused me. There's also a bit at the end when the female assassin gets knocked out of the back of their moving van. It's like, yeah, that looks pretty terrible. That you clearly just knocked her into a bunch of green pillows. Thanks for that. Again, like structurally, it's. I can only say kind of the same thing that we said about Pacific Rim last week. It's extraordinarily basic, and there's a lot of things that you kind of wish had been fleshed out, but that again, at that point it becomes an issue of editing and where time goes. There's things I would have done differently to be sure, but the basics of the standard heroic journey are still there. And I mean, I've seen. And
well, hang on.
consequently, I've seen
what
that story
arc did he go on? That was one thing I wanted to mention. I don't feel like, and this is up for debate, but after thinking about it, didn't feel like he was any different at the end of his journey than he was at the beginning. He was a psycho-fan for hang on.
Sort of.
He's a psycho-fan for Halliday at the beginning, still is at the end. He was the honorable good guy in the beginning, and he is at the end. I think
it's
he was
more
a bit
about
of a Mary
the moral
Sue.
of the story than necessarily him, right? He, along with everyone else, has to learn what the moral story is that virtual reality, gaming, whatever your thing is that you like, don't get so wrapped up in it that you don't go outside or you don't live life for real. And he does get to learn that by turning the game off for 2 days a week and having a girlfriend and all this other kind of stuff. I mean, and that way he grows, not necessarily in that he changes the character, because he's a goody two-shoes at the beginning, he's a goody two-shoes at the end. That's not going to change him much. I mean, it was always about being genuine to Halliday.
Here's the thing. I'll give you, yes, you should go outside and breathe fresh air and be with real people. It was a lot easier for him to work that lesson after he had inherited a fortune, and got the girl at the end. It's like all right, good lesson. I get what you're saying. I kind of agree with it, but it still seemed it seemed a little too easy. But
the whole movie was a little too easy.
Go ahead, Winfree. I cut you off.
No, I was gonna basically kind of say what Sean said, and the other thing about that is, there's not a lot of character development in the traditional sense of the word. The big change that he undergoes is, and bear in mind if you want to call this an actual change, or if you'd rather argue it's degrees of the same thing, I'm perfectly. This is not a hill I'm going to die on per se. But it goes from being, for him, a kind of, I hate to say casual obsession, but I feel that's the appropriate, because casual obsession is something of an oxymoron, but it conveys the appropriate feeling for him going from being someone who is, sure, he wants to, win, he's obsessed with Halliday, but he has no greater context for what he's doing. And his gathering, the fact that he does wind up with a greater context for it and becoming more engaged in the world beyond his own desire to, hero worship someone who came up with something he loved. And again, if you want to argue that that's more, that's not really a change or an arc, there's only so much I can disagree with that point, but that is kind of the journey he goes on, even though there's not a lot of, again, character development as such.
It was an interesting dynamic between the girl and him, because the girl is saying, there are bigger stakes here. There's a bigger picture in play, and you need to take this seriously. And he kind of has like maybe I should kind of a moment. And
yeah, and that's basically the crux of his character evolution. And again, is that incredibly weak? Yeah, it is.
And that's kind of it. That's not an arc. That's a bump.
Again, look, you asked me to point out the elements of his journey in the internal rather than the external sense. That's what I got. That's what the movie gave me to work with. All
right. Because if we're done reviewing the movie, we'll move on to the next section here. I don't want to rush anybody. So, Sean, anything you want to talk about as far as the craft of the movie?
I do think I understand why he did it, but I do think it's weird that Spielberg chose to remove a lot of himself from the movie. The book has him in it a lot.
Without an Indiana Jones reference.
Yeah, it's the 80s. Come on. You got to have some of that stuff in there. Okay. It's just...
So, remember, books are for burning. I haven't read this thing. A lot of people who saw the movie haven't read this thing. So maybe that's something we need to go over real quick. Exactly what changes are there from the book to the movie here, Sean?
Oh, God.
The way they get the
So
keys are totally different.
Okay.
Yeah, the challenges are completely different.
Yeah, they're completely different. They are much more elaborate, much more detailed. They are not even anything close to what happens in the movie. I will say the Shining thing in the movie is absolutely probably the best thing about the entire movie. And this is from somebody that's only read the book. I have not seen the movie itself. But
Oh, come on! How can you not have seen the Shining? Like I've done both, and they're both great for different reasons.
I've seen
I
the
agree
movie.
with
There's
you.
a lot of differences.
I have definitely
But,
seen the
like,
movie.
It's great the way they decided. Like I saw it and I was like, oh wow, this is so awesome. They're doing that. They chose The Shining, and it was in the theater. Everybody lit up and started paying attention as soon as that happened in the theater and at least in my theater. It was the moment that everybody got loud. Everybody started paying attention. Everybody started making that. Like, oh God, this is happening, and all that stuff. Like, nobody really did anything else.
The first time that horn sequence hits, it's. I mean, The Shining has one of the all-time great horror soundtracks to begin with.
Yeah. It's so like that doesn't happen. The race thing doesn't happen either. So it's very like. It's very movie-fied the way they did the collecting of the keys, like very action-oriented, making sure you are paying attention constantly. The way they did it in the book, think about it almost the way they do that whole trying to find the Sorcerer's Stone in Harry Potter, like much more elaborate, much more that way than say the way that Spielberg chose to do it for this. But the references are all that stuff is in it. That's what I love the most is like going from one thing to the other. I felt like I watched that movie like 3 or 4 times to still not get everything, which that's kind of cool in itself. But yeah, that's the most striking thing for me was like, wow, none of these things that they do to collect the keys are the same. Like they completely changed it. That's great. That was crazy to me.
You mentioned why Spielberg chose to take himself out of the movie. So can you elaborate on that?
Well, he said he didn't want to be self-referencing, right? Because he's directing. He didn't want...
So there's a lot of his material in the book?
Yes.
The book is a love letter not to pop culture, but specifically to 80s pop culture. Yeah, there's a lot of Spielberg.
Exactly. Think about it. You can't live through the 80s without Spielberg. I mean...
Okay.
So,
yeah, no,
I mean, he kept the...
I'm surprised there was like no E.T. references.
Yeah,
that was weird.
There are in the book, but yeah, there's no E.T., there's no Indiana Jones. They removed the Terminator too, which was a little odd because I seem to recall that one got some play.
The T-Rex got changed in the rice on purpose so that it didn't look the Jurassic Park T-Rex. There's quite a few other ones that he decided there was actually like Ernest Cline tried to sneak some in there, and then Spielberg apparently would knock them out.
Okay.
I mean, there's a few other things that at least one of the the final the way the book is structured, the actual challenges after the first one. The first one's slightly different in setup, but for the other two. The final, it's a battle just to get into the actual challenge that will give you the key at the end.
Right.
And the final challenge in both the second and third gates are actual, it's a brand new technology for the book. It's taking over the place of the lead character in a movie. And then you have to have memorized the dialogue, and you act out the movie.
Yeah, they call it Flick Sync.
Yeah, the first one you get is I think War Games,
Mm-hmm.
And then the final one is actually Monty Python.
Yeah.
So again, there's a lot of differences there. There's actually an entire sequence when he kind of leaves his friends in the book, and because he is now famous and somewhat rich in the virtual world, there's a discussion about how you're able to about the conversion rate between again like cryptocurrency in the game to currency that you can spend in the real world. and the linking of accounts and things like that. So again, there's actual economic stakes, and he actually leaves them for a while and establishes his own he rents a really nice penthouse apartment, and he kind of goes it on his own from that perspective. He actually lives on his own, which is kind of an elaborate ploy to set up his sabotage from inside IOI. But they essentially gave that bit to Artemis for the sake of the movie. There's some non-trivial differences. Again, for better or worse, I generally leave that up to interpretation. But
one last thing I want to say about it, and then if you guys have nothing else, then we'll move on. I think other than the actual race, my other favorite aspect of the movie was the nods to gaming culture, good, bad, or indifferent. My favorite character in the movie is IROC. Just that name, that's everything about that character. Is whoa, don't throw that bomb. I've got 10 years worth of shit in me. Just that guy who just nothing but game, and he makes himself look like a total badass. I would have loved to have just a cutaway to have seen
we needed a shot of him in real life. My neck! I got this repetitive stress.
It needed to be
I got to see a chiropractor.
It needed to be the character from South Park from the World of Warcraft episode. That's what I wanted.
It didn't have to be that bad, but I mean, the actual actor, I think, who they had do his voice would have been fine.
Yeah, you needed to.
Yeah, they had T.J. Miller do it, who is
right.
He's a goofy-looking guy, and again, he doesn't have to be fat and pimply. He's just goofy-looking enough that juxtaposed with, the way the way his avatar looks would be enough.
Maybe his shot of his mom in the background doing laundry. It would have been really been.
Which again is which is not actually how that would have played out, because given the economics of the game versus real life, he actually would be just set for life financially. After everything that he's done,
a nod to the YouTube culture. His character is killed. He's lost all of his stuff, and he gets up. And he just you cut to him, and he gets up quietly, starts to walk away from his computer, and begins immediately trashing everything around him. Something something along those lines. But yeah, there was just enough of that nonsense going on in. With his character and some of the other things you see in the OASIS that I and as somebody who played Warcraft pretty feverishly for a few years until parenting pretty much took over my life, which I'm not complaining about.
Well, you got the short end of that stick.
I prefer my kids to World of Warcraft. It's true, I do.
Your wife's in the background.
Well, even the thing with the key to the race is a gaming thing, because going back, doing the whole, hey, let me go backwards and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of something you do, so
yeah,
I appreciated that too.
I heard a couple of reviewers said that that's the first thing people do in a video game race. All right, Sean,
not actually untrue.
Yeah. All right, Sean, any last words on the craft of the movie?
I do like that they at least changed the cast up a bit. I mean, they totally 2018 the cast. Right? H is not that character in the book. He's just a white dude. So they changed him, or changed him into a her. And so, that was, I thought that was kind of actually totally okay. There was a lot of people complaining that, which is how it's sort of true, but I think you also kind of got to look at it. Look, it's an 80s pop culture sort of, homage. So think of it as in they're also doing the movie this way. But a lot of people complain about the whole. Well, Artemis is a lot more independent and, has her own thing in the book, and they sort of make it more of a oh well, it's totally about the guy in the movie. We didn't 2018 this thing enough with feminism, whatever. But it didn't bother me. I just thought I'd mention that because we hadn't talked about it.
The ode to nerd culture wasn't girly enough. It wasn't feminist enough. Really? That's what we're gonna. I'm sure we'll get to that when we get to the Rotten Tomato reviews. I'll make sure I find the ones that say this isn't the Trumpiest movie of the year or the most or the most Me Too, or whatever it is we're doing these days.
I hate so much. So much.
All right. With that said, let's talk about my favorite part of Damn You, Hollywood. Here come the money.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money,
Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar.
All righty. Ladies and germs, on a budget of $175 million as of this recording, Warner Brothers Pictures' Ready Player One has brought in a sweet, sweet $186.5 million. My God, there are so many movies that we've talked about over the past year or so that would have loved to have brought in $186 million and a half dollars.
You already mentioned the Four Stick.
Their first weekend. It's just, people, just other movies looking dreamily at Ready Player One going, what can we do to be more like you? Says
Meanwhile, everyone financially associated with Ready Player One is like, come on, we need another 100 million at least.
Yeah, well, no.
Exactly.
This isn't profitable yet, children. We'll eventually get there.
Also, I forgot to mention, do you think that there would have been as many references as there were if it wasn't Spielberg directing the movie?
Well, it depends. I mean, now you're talking licensing.
Right, but I mean, I think Spielberg being like Spielberg, it's like, oh yeah, sure, please, take it. But like, if somebody else was doing it, I don't know, maybe not.
Like if he was in a producer role and somebody else had chosen to direct, and it's like, hey, this is a love letter to you, and to what you brought, you brought to the culture, and if I kind of get where Spielberg might have been coming from, in the sense of, well, I don't want my movie that I'm directing to be about me. This is telling a greater story, and about other things. But if somebody else wants to do a love letter to me, that's fine. Yeah, I can see that. So right now, actually, let's talk about the weekend. Ready Player One did a hot potato of the number one spot, took it from Pacific Rim, who had finally defeated Black Panther, who went on like a 5-week winning streak. Ready Player One debuted at number one. Robert Winfree's favorite movie of the year so far, Tyler Perry's Acrimony.
Shut up.
Debuted at number 2. Black Panther sunk from 2 to 3. I Can Only Imagine 3 to 4. Pacific Rim, now, this actually did sink, 1 to 5. Well, it was nice while it lasted, Universal. Sherlock Gnomes, Robert Winfree's favorite animated movie of the year so far. My kids
Again, bite me.
I avoided seeing that, but my wife did take my kids finally. They had a good time.
My brother had a friend who was forced to sit through it and said it was roughly akin to ingesting nuclear byproduct through his eyes.
Have you taken your sweet, sweet daughter, sir, Mr. Garmer? Have you taken your child?
She saw Peter Rabbit with cousins. She did not see this movie, thank God.
All right, moving right along. Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider finally has actually surpassed where I thought it would be. It's close to 300 million as of this writing, dropped from 5 to 7. I thought it was going to die at about 200 million. Wrinkle in Time dropped from 6 to 8. Sean Garmer, what did you think of Reese Witherspoon playing lettuce?
I have not seen the movie yet.
Oh, I hate to have spoiled it for you because that's the best part.
There's a literal 2-minute sequence where Reese Witherspoon magically transforms herself into a piece of romaine lettuce for everyone to fly on.
I hope you like smoking dope because that's the only way to get through A Wrinkle in Time.
And again, I am not joking. That sounds like I'm just BSing. Nope. 100%.
Oh, that sounds awful.
It is.
Giant
Oprah.
Love Simon dropped from 7 to 9. Paul, Apostle of Christ, dropped from 8 to 10. Isle of Dogs, the Wes Anderson animated film, jumped from 15 to 11. And God's Not Dead, A Light in the Darkness, debuted at number 12. We round out the top 20 with Game Night, the aforementioned Peter Rabbit, Midnight Sun, Unsane, The Death of Stalin, Red Sparrow, which is based on a novel, by the way, The Greatest Showman, fucking Jumanji. Jesus Christ.
God bless.
I really hope The Rock negotiated for a percentage of the box office receipts. That's all I'm saying.
My God, Star Wars, The Last Jedi is number 30, and it is beat 10 points, 10 places by Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle. God bless you, Sony.
To be fair, Jumanji has more rewatch value than The Last Jedi, all things considered.
I'm not going to argue with you there. All right, so that's how the weekend played out. Worldwide grosses. Obviously, Black Panther is still sitting pretty in the number 1 spot. That's not getting beat anytime soon, except by some, Infinity War. Let's just go ahead and say that right off the bat. In the 2 and 3 spots, we got our foreign films: Operation Red Sea and Detective Chinatown 2. And then still sitting at just under $400 million, Robert Winfree and Ronnie Adams' date movie for 50 Shades Free. Go Universal.
Seriously, they're terribly I don't have some great moral objection. They're just bad movies. They were bad books. They're bad movies.
50 Shades Free was a wonderful film about a girl and a boy and love. Did you see it, Sean Garmer? Have you seen 50 Shades Free yet?
No, I'm good
No.
without seeing any of those 50 Shades whatever things.
You are a better person for not having seen them.
There was a young lady who I wanted to hang out with, and that's what she wanted to see, so that's what I saw.
Your extramarital activities aside.
Yeah. I'm not gonna say no if some pretty lady wants to go see it. I'm not
see?
seeing it myself.
No, exactly. So now you see where I was coming from, right, Sean?
Yep.
All right, then.
Look, the most attractive woman in the world could offer to take me to see that movie. I would say no.
That's where you're wrong. The Maze Runner.
Whoa. What makes you think
Jesus.
I'm wrong about that? In all seriousness.
Can we not do this bit every week? Even though I
Are you
antagonize you every week?
In all seriousness, I would genuinely say no because there's no point in it.
Good for you. So Ronnie Adams said the same thing to me, and I shook my head then too. Tomb Raider.
Ronnie's taking a moral stance. Mine is more practical. I would be miserable watching a terrible movie. I would be in the company of someone who wanted to watch said terrible movie, making the entire thing an exercise in nothing but self-flagellation. And if that's what I want, there are better movies regarding that same subject material.
The Maze Runner, The Death Cure, sitting at number 6 with $284 million. Tomb Raider, as I said before, has somehow or other crossed the 200 million mark, although they've decided death to the franchise, death to Tomb Raider.
International receipts.
Yeah. Paddington 2 from January is still sitting in the top 10, though it's about to leave the top 10 very, very shortly. Pacific Rim still climbing at number 9 with 232. Once again, go Universal. And rounding out the top 10 in the world is Peter Rabbit. Just underneath that is the aforementioned movie Ready Player One and 186. My guess is that here's the problem with Ready Player One. As we said last week, when you get to these March movies, and to a degree April, though April is now less crowded than it once was, it's not that these movies won't make money and people won't go see them. It's that they have a lot of stiff competition. They've loaded up springtime with blockbuster movies that used to be the domain of the summertime and the holidays.
I mean, in all seriousness, if you want to make a lot of money with a big blockbuster at this point, you actually do release it in the summer because everyone else is racing to see how fast they can get these things out.
Well, look at Black Panther.
Look at spring.
Black Panther had no competition for a while. I mean, granted, that movie was successful for
February.
A bunch of reasons, but yeah, there's a reason why January is known as "fuck you." It's January. It's because it's a dumping ground, for movies. February used to not be much better. I mean, things did not really start to get rolling until May, and then May started to bleed into April, and April bled into March, and now it's basically your two dead months are January and September. Try going to the movies in September. I dare you.
I have, and I will in the future.
I mean, you could just load up on movies you need to see and then watch them all in September.
Also true. No, somebody brought this up actually about Rampage. When they moved up the release date for Infinity War, if you had moved Rampage instead of keeping it where it was, where it's now like they moved Rampage commensurate to it, so it's still 1 week ahead of Infinity War. If they'd actually just released it the week after, I mean, you're maybe not going to win the box office, but the next like 3 weeks, there's nothing.
I was going to say, yeah, May went from loaded to nothing.
Yeah, like, so I genuinely think you might have been better off just releasing Rampage the week after Infinity War. You're not going to ever win the box office, but you're now, like, everyone will have already seen Infinity War, and there's a lot of nothing behind it.
Yeah,
so
May has become as dead as January with I mean, it started with Deadpool because initially May was Infinity War and
Deadpool
Solo
sucks.
and nothing in between. Then they moved like Slender Man out, and they moved Deadpool in, and then they moved Infinity War out. It was like, what the hell are we doing here? But yeah, getting back to Ready Player One. Ready Player One, this week is the two big movies are Chappaquiddick, which nobody going to see Ready Player One seeing Chappaquiddick, so there's no problem there.
No overlap. No overlap at all.
Zero overlap. And then you have John Cena's Blockers movie, which apparently is getting rave reviews. There's some overlap there.
It's a raunchy R-rated comedy written by some hyperliberal feminist. Of course it's going to be well reviewed. I mean, really, if you wanted to see better reviews for the Ghostbusters movie, you make it an R-rated comedy and you just throw the kids out. And then critically, it's a smashing success, even though financially it does about as poor.
Ghostbusters was a fine piece of cinema.
Was absolutely not. And we've already had that argument. You
Every
already
week.
lost it.
Every week it's the same thing. Aren't you having a great time, Sean?
Hey, I'm laughing, so it's fine.
Yeah, so Ready Player One next week will probably be the number one movie in the world again. But then after that, it's
next week.
Huh?
Something comes out next week.
No, this Friday is just Blockers and Chappaquiddick of note. The weekend after that is Rampage. That's the 13th, and that's going to be the end of that. Nothing on the 20th, and then the 27th is the Avengers, which is pretty much going to eat the summer. Maybe it gets some stiff competition from Jurassic Park when that comes out, but I don't know. I think the Jurassic World, the fact that Jurassic World made over $1 billion was because it was dealing with the same thing kind of Star Wars was dealing with. You went away for a very long time, and people have fond memories of you, and then you came back, and all those people came back, and they brought their children. And isn't this wonderful? What a remembrance of a thing we once loved. And that was probably just enough, considering Jurassic World was a silly movie. And then they were like, no,
Look,
this made $1 billion. We need to make another one.
It got brought up before. Everyone loves the cover band.
Well, what I'm getting is
that's all The Force Awakens, and that's all Jurassic World were.
When you look at what possible movies are going to unseat the megalith that's going to be the Infinity War movie, it's not going to be Solo. Not that it matters; it's the same stupid studio. It's not going to be Deadpool, which isn't testing well. It's going to do okay.
That really surprised me. Because I have no interest in Deadpool. I had no interest in the first Deadpool. I was the lone man on the hill going, this really isn't all that good. Here's why. And everyone was like, shut up. It's hilarious.
Yes, I remember that fight.
Yes, I was still right.
Sure you were.
But no, so I finally got to have the experience of watching the Deadpool 2 trailer with people who were more interested in the first one, because I mean, again, I didn't like the first one. I know I'm not going to like the second. Fair play, that's cool. But a lot of people I know who no, I really did like the first one. They've seen the trailers for the second one and kind of went, yeah, really?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I've seen some videos. It's not, the test screenings did not go well. So I don't know. What I've heard about, look, I'm going to go see it. I probably will enjoy it, but I don't think I'm going to enjoy it as much as the first one. In any case, we're talking money here, and no, Deadpool 2 is not going to do as well as Infinity War. It's just not. Then you have Ocean's 8, not going to even come close. You have The Incredibles. Does it matter?
Maybe.
It's the same goddamn studio. the mouse. The aforementioned.
Yes, it's still the mouse.
Oh, Incredibles 2 might do it.
Again,
See,
there's an
they're
outside
waiting
chance
so
that
long
it
for
might
that.
unseat it, but Mark's like harping on the fact that no one beats Disney.
No,
This
no.
offends him in some
Except Disney
profound
itself.
way.
Right. And then you have Ant-Man and the Wasp and Skyscraper, Mission Impossible, and then we're out of the summer. So, yeah, the Infinity War is going to own the summer. Nothing's beating it. It's going to be the number one movie of this year. Probably.
I'm going to laugh when it is now just to screw with you.
It's going to be. There's what competition does it have at the end of the year? Aquaman? Bumblebee? Robin Hood? Wreck-It Ralph 2? Which now my son's now obsessed with, and that's both my kids. When are we seeing Wreck-It Ralph Breaks the Internet? And I'm like, fucking November, calm down.
I'm so excited for that movie.
You do have Wreck-It Ralph 2, which is a sequel to a movie everyone loved.
And it's
obviously
still
not me.
Disney.
You do have the Fantastic Beasts sequel coming out in November.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's true. That's about the okay. So yeah, Warner Brothers might come close to.
And you do have the Mary Poppins Returns movie. I mean, I'm not interested in that
Still
at all.
Disney.
I don't care for the original Mary Poppins, but
All right. So with that said, that's all there is to say about the money.
A
Sean,
Quiet Place comes out next week. That's what I was thinking of.
I'm not going to see that. All right.
Why not? Come on. I suffered.
Speaking of suffering, I have a question for you guys. Now, when I say I have a question, that's everyone's cue to not talk.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Sean, I gotta ask, you've been on Spreaker for what seems like 20 years now. How do you all deal with only one person can hear the shenanigan sound effects, or do you guys not do shenanigan sound effects?
We do sometimes, but we kind of already know what they're going to be beforehand.
Okay.
So
you don't have problems where people have this wonderful, God bless them, tendency to talk over the sound effect because they can't hear it?
no, because we let everybody know that we're going to some kind of break or whatever.
It's very telegraphed.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the thing, because I go, hey, because it used to be, hey, Robert, I have a question. Are you ready? And then you would hear Michael Scott yelling no. And then I added the DX thing of Triple H saying, are you ready? So now I don't even ask him. I don't even say, are you ready, Robert? I let Triple H do it. But then that leaves me with only one prompt, which is, I have a question. And I can't tell you now how many times I've heard somebody go, what's your question? I don't. Meanwhile, there's a sound effect playing. This happens every week.
Hey, I didn't go over it this time. That was him.
It's becoming a running gag.
Well, it's a running.
It's good to have a
something.
running gag, though.
It's true. All right. Sean, you know what comes next, right? This is the part where we read the Rotten Tomato reviews, typically the rotten ones, and we tell the critics that they're terrible at their job. Are you ready to do this? Because you seem like a guy who's not really into pissing in other people's cornflakes. Can you handle this? This is 10 minutes of hate here. Do you have what it takes, sir?
I will definitely try.
Okay. Daniel Solzman of Solzy at the Movies. Ready Player One.
Let me tell you about that awful. What's that name, by the way?
Ready Player One is visually pleasing, but at the end of the day, it's just another film heavy on Easter eggs and short on character development.
I mean, that's a legitimate criticism if you're not trying to do it. Like, this movie is deliberately nothing but Easter eggs and kind of stock character progression. You can, if you want to complain about, whatever we saw last week that I don't really remember or care
Pacific
about.
Rim.
Okay, if you want to complain that Pacific Rim is a bunch of like references and stock characters, okay, that's a fair criticism. Complaining about an adaptation of a material that is deliberately nothing but Easter eggs, having 80% Easter eggs, just seems asinine to me.
So, I want to kick this off right here, because it's been said that this is probably the best Steven Spielberg film in 10 years. Except for this guy. He disagrees. Chris Evangelista of Slash Film. It's official. Ready Player One is Steven Spielberg's worst film.
Oh, for the love of...
Oh, God, really?
I gotta get a list.
I need the list.
I'm getting the
I
list.
Need a list. I need Spielberg's filmography. Okay, here we go. Really? Okay, I might even forgive this guy for forgetting that 1941 exists. Because, to be fair, most of us do. I mean, oh god, he got purple.
Didn't he direct the last Indiana Jones film, which was universally banned?
Yes!
Yeah,
He
that was
directed
awful.
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
And looked terrible, too. Like, I remember the ants. The ants were like, I've seen better video game graphics. All right, in the last 10 years...
Okay, so if we go to 2008.
Sure.
Okay, well, let's start at 8. I mean, in 2008, he directed Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Well,
All right.
you know what? He failed there.
All right, so
There's also been The Adventures of Tintin, War
Horse, Lincoln.
I mean, Lincoln was pretty good. Bridge of Spies was mediocre. I haven't actually. It's been too long since I've seen the BFG. No, okay, he directed The Post, which I think is. That's a tough one. I might argue that it's worse than this, but it's at a minimum, it's kind of. But again, like you're just willfully ignoring a lot of stuff here. The War of the Worlds from 2005.
He's executive producing the Bumblebee movie.
Oh boy.
He has produced all the Transformers movies.
So going prior to that, let's see, Munich, War of the Worlds, The Terminal, Catch Me If You Can, Minority Report, AI.
Oh god, AI.
Okay, The Lost World sucked.
Yes.
Sucked is a bit strong, but I would not say it's worse. I would not say this was appreciably worse than it.
Let's see,
There's at
Temple
least
of Doom.
4 to 5 movies. No. Like again, there's at least 4 to 5 movies that he's made, and God bless Spielberg, that are worse than this.
Yeah.
This is someone just talking out of his
ass
posterior for the sake of doing so.
All right. Let's see here. Eric Henriksen of The Strangers, Seattle, Washington. It's nostalgia for the sake of nostalgia, and by the time its end credits roll, one wonders if there was anything worth being nostalgic about in the first place. Get him,
Really?
Sean. Get him, Sean.
Really? What? Like, I'm guessing you didn't, again, look at the source material and know that entire book and the entire thing is about nostalgia. I mean, come on. Like, give me a break. If you're not nostalgic about all the references in this damn movie, why are you watching it?
Vivian Kane of The Mary Sue. The movie is wall-to-wall pop culture references, and while that's exhausting and tedious, it's also inevitable that you'll manage to push your own specific nostalgia buttons. Oh, this person did not want to go see this movie at all, and is mad they had to review it.
Yeah, I mean, congratulations, you're becoming Leonard Maltin. I don't know how you should feel about that, but no, yeah, okay. It's nonstop pop culture references by design. Like again, is that something of a failing in the? It's a weakness, not a failing. It's a weakness of the source material, sure, but how do you make the leap from something that is weak like that? Again, has this built-in weakness, but is perfectly content to let it exist. I mean, you may as well criticize the dialogue from, like, The Artist, which is somewhat amusing because it's, a silent film.
Chaos.
I mean, honestly, when I went to go watch this movie, I did not expect that there was going to be that many. I thought there'd be some here and there or whatever, but the fact that they were able to keep that up throughout the movie, I think that's a accomplishment in of itself, really.
K. Austin Collins of The Ringer. Ready Player One may be a movie about the future, but it is damningly a product of our present.
How do you figure?
And that's bad?
Hold on. How do you figure that this is that comment, loose commentary on the contemporary is somehow a negative? Like, I mean, this is a deeply positive story. What do you?
I mean, there is negatives in there. Like it's more the book than the actual movie, but
it's like this barely makes any sense. This is someone who's just disillusioned with contemporary life and is now foisting quasi-nihilism into film review.
I mean, the movie mentions that, but it's not like it dwells on it.
Yeah.
Chris Plant of Polygon. In fact, it appears, for a moment, to be barreling toward a potent critique of the book and the broader culture of the privileged, young white millionaire men of Silicon Valley.
Piss off already. Just stop. Surrender your right to express yourself. You are that stupid.
Unfortunately, it stumbles at the finish line.
No, I demand that my particular views on wealth distribution and racism be represented in film. Well, then make your own damn movie. Like, what's the matter with you people?
Al Hoff.
It's about to critique all of these, quasi-social justice causes I feel strongly about, and then it doesn't do it the way I want to, so no, shut up. You whiny baby.
Katie Walsh of the Tribune Noon Service. We hates you, Katie Walsh says. We hates you. It tricks you into thinking it has stakes. Distracting with the old razzle-dazzle and hoping you don't pop open the hood and kick the tires on this story, which turns out to be a lemon.
Lemon's a bit strong, but I think we did also kind of bring up that there's a real disconnect as far as the stakes go for the larger world.
Yeah, I don't have a major problem with what you said there. I just don't like Katie Walsh. We've read enough of her stuff she makes the We Hates Is You list. Let's see here. I'm trying to find some more of our friends. Oh, hey, we haven't heard of this guy in a while.
Oh,
Robert
joy.
Winfree. It's your old friend, Joe Morgenstern of the Wall Street Journal.
Oh, God. Why? I thought he was dead.
Joe Morgenstern, or the body they've propped up like Weekend at Bernie's, writes in...
The quasi-reanimated corpse that was once the human being, Joe Morgenstern.
Haptics weren't needed to feel the emotional pull of his best films. They aimed for the heart and hit much more often than they missed. Ready Player One aims for the adrenal gland. Oh, Joe, you crazy old man, you.
Really? We really made such a statement there, Joe.
Okay. Let's start with this. Again, Spielberg's filmography is not exactly pristine. I mean, that just needs to be said at the beginning here. Again, we all remember his successes because they are great. There's a lot of failures in there too, and you shouldn't whitewash over those. Second, the fact that he is... I mean, you are now artificially imposing your desire for heartfelt cinema onto a movie that, by your own admission, in your own statement, deliberately goes for the more blind action, and somehow you view this as this catastrophic negative. Of all the things I can yell about the Transformers franchise, and I have never said, how dare they be action movies? Which is kind of what you're getting at here. How dare this be a thrill ride?
Right?
No. I yell at the Transformers movies for being bad action movies. Not because they're not that they are...
Except for Age of Extinction.
No. All of them. Universally, all of them.
Age of Extinction is a fine piece of cinematic art.
I am not rehashing this argument. That is the exact same thing you said about Ghostbusters. They both suck out loud.
And 50 Shades Freed.
Oh.
Well, I'd make a joke about sucking in 50 Shades, but I'm better than that.
Are you? Are you better?
In this moment, I am. Again, like this is just someone whining about action movies existing. Like, just shut up.
Eric D. Snyder.
Go rewatch the 8-hour PBS Pride and Prejudice adaptation.
Eric D. Snyder of Crooked Marquee. We hate you, Eric D. Snyder. We hate you.
You can take the Eric off, and it's still an accurate statement too.
Busy and hectic. Busy and hectic, but third try. Busy and hectic, but not cohesive. A game that's nothing more than a game.
Okay. A game that's nothing more than a game is a stupid argument.
Yes.
Just fundamentally. B, this is really coherent. I mean, there's a couple of visual sequences that are very busy, but they're deliberately busy. Like, it's not... To bring up Michael Bay again, this isn't Transformers action that's designed to just be forgettable and impossible to follow. There's parts that exist as they did because we're designed to elicit chaos, but as a deliberate function of those moments of story, this is a very coherent story.
Yeah, you go off.
I'm kind of surprised that you couldn't follow that. I mean, if you doze off, then maybe you just don't want to admit that you actually fell asleep during fashion, so you're now calling a movie incoherent.
This might be the Get 'em Winfree one of the night. It's from our good friend Marianne Johansson of Flick Philosopher.
Ugh.
A nightmare of nothingness, of empty, soulless wankery that serves only to reassure male dorks that their pop culture obsessions make them special and will make cute girls like them. Well, guys, I'm going to walk away for a moment. Have at it.
Wow.
Okay. I almost don't want to start off with actually talking about what she said when it's so much easier to launch personal attacks, but I'm not going to. I'm going to try and take the high road here. You actually tried typing out the word wankery. I mean, I can't actually think of a greater criticism of your ability to formulate coherent thought than that. You decided that was a good word and phrase to use. Second, I'm going to assume your political bent based on what you've said. For a culture inside that is so anti-bullying on its surface, you seem not to have a problem with continuing to heap scorn on the socially awkward and the nerds and those who again are obsessed with pop culture. I mean, I can't imagine why if you actually believed in anti-bullying, but you don't. You believe in self-aggrandizing, you freaking hypocrite. And I really do kind of fail to see... this movie serves to, reinforce, it serves to make the downtrodden in this particular sense feel good about themselves, and yet you're the same type of person who would probably gleefully cheer on Ghostbusters simply because it's cast entirely with women. Oh, never mind all the structural problems, never mind all the bad jokes, never mind the terrible CGI and the loose plot structure. It's full of women, and little girls need to be shown empowering things. But boy, if we try making, men obsessed with popular culture feel good about themselves, how dare you? This is worthy of nothing but scorn. You are just the worst.
No, this next one's the worst.
It only gets worse
than that.
Yeah.
Yes.
It can, Sean. It can always get worse.
Yep,
There is not a situation so bad that a human being, through their deliberate actions, cannot make it worse.
I have a real talent for just when you think you found the worst review, the worst written review on something, I can find one even worse. Speaking of which, Sean Burns of The Artery, and Artery in ART is capitalized in Artery. Get it? Do you get it, Sean?
Wow.
Artery.
Again,
This individual clearly exists at the height of intellectualism, with that kind of a pun.
All right, Sean, are you ready for this one?
Yeah.
This is Fanboy Fellatio, and I found it all almost unbearably depressing.
No shit, Sherlock. Are we watching the same fucking thing here? Again. I just don't get it. People that complain about a movie actually trying to be its source. Imagine if all the people would be bitching about the fact that they completely did it differently than the way that the book does it, right? Like, if they had none of this fanboy fellatio in it, and it was all just straight up heart and not caring about any of this, like, there'd be more complaining about that than there is what this dude is doing. Heaven forbid they actually try to do what their book did and give you what you are expecting when you watch this movie. God, go. So, shouldn't you have actual, like, structure in your review system, having somebody go review a film that, might actually care or know something about what they're reviewing, and not just going out there because, hey, I gotta do this. I don't know.
I mean, considering that half of my gimmick is that I'm forced into this by Mark, I'd like to think that there's at least something of an example in the way I do this. Yeah, I might complain about the list that Mark comes up with, and because so much of it is just so bad. It's so bad. But when it comes to actually discussing the films themselves, I really, really try not to have the fact that I would never watch this of my own volition play that heavily into my thoughts on the film. If the film is terrible, then sure. I would never watch this voluntarily. Mark made me. Here's why I hated it. But there's been at least a few.
And for that exact same motif, check out our Ghostbusters review.
Yes, I would like to think that, again, my issues with Ghostbusters were there regardless of, my unwillingness to see it. If it had been, because we've had a few instances where movies that Mark has like, no, we are reviewing this, and I'm like, this is going to suck, and I come out of it going, it didn't suck. It's not great, but it didn't suck.
So do you ever get to make your own list, or?
No. Mark makes the list.
Nah.
But he has a show, or he has the opportunity on a show to make me watch things out of revenge. It's called Because You Made Me, and he apparently has a list of things he wants to subject me to.
Oh, giant list. It's like a page and a half on a legal pad.
Yeah, quick. I don't know if Sean's ever heard this, because Sean puts up our stuff. I don't know if he listens to all of us, but go tell Sean the story of how that list came to be.
Yeah, there was this thing when Mark said, because Mark makes me watch all these terrible things, and at one point he kind of put out there, I'm willing to, to anyone else, I'm willing to watch things that, I haven't seen, that, in an effort to expand his cultural vocabulary, his experiences. So I would like a list, and then, have whoever suggested this particular film on, and we can talk about it, and I grabbed a legal pad that sits next to my computer and immediately started coming up with 40 films that are purely punitive on my part that I have already seen and suffered through. That no, I will go through this again just to have Mark suffer because of all the pain and anguish that he has caused me over the years on this show.
It seems only fair.
I know, right?
What had happened was, the first part of that was I lost a bet to Gavin, which eventually I'm going to win. But for the time being, I agreed that
really not.
I at the time they were like, no, Gambit's off the schedule for the foreseeable future, and at that point that was the bet. So I deigned to have lost the Gambit bet, and I said, okay, well, if I lose a bet, then you can pick a movie for me to watch and we'll review it. And that was kind of the impetus of because you made me. And so when I threw that out there, I said, okay, well, we'll make this a thing, and when there's availability on the schedule, if there's something somebody wants me to see and review, and they really have a passion for reviewing it, we'll do that as part of that show. And then at which point Robert, sat window side, with the moon shining brightly on his pad as he began to scribble the revenge movies he wanted me to see.
Oh yeah. There's a list.
But no, Damn You Hollywood is mine alone, damn it. All right.
And really, Mark was able to escape from this by saying, I really don't want to do more than, 2 podcasts a week.
Yeah, I threw it all out there, then I realized what I had done, and it's like, no, I don't work 4 days a week anymore.
What a cheap way to get out of that.
I know, right?
Tony Medley of the Tulican Times. This failed the watch test miserably, as I didn't know if I would actually survive almost 2.5 hours of watching all this nonsensical gobbledygook. But it will probably gross $1 billion. Well, you're wrong on 2 counts, sir.
Yeah, like this, again, like I hate the watch test in the sense that it is deeply subjective. Like it's not a test. It is not. There's no empirical data behind this. There is. I could barely stand to watch this. I nearly walked out of Ghostbusters. I nearly walked out of. Oh, what was the other one? There was one other movie that.
The Last Night.
Yeah. There have been a couple of movies that Mark has made me watch that I have to physically stop myself from getting up and walking out of a theater because they're just so bad.
I think I almost with that King Arthur movie with the recent one.
Which is kind of a shame because they're such good about the movie, but it is such a troubled production. It never really overcame anything associated with that. But again, like the watch test is just you. Like it's not a test. We're not dealing with empirical data here, so.
All right, last one. Are we ready, folks? Actually, there's 2. I'm going to read these back to back just to get them done. But these are the last 2 we're going to do for the night. Anthony Lane, top critic of The New Yorker. I saw the film in IMAX, and a week later, I'm still waiting for the safe return of my optic nerves. But it was the meager emotional charge that shocked me the most. And James Vernier of Boston Herald says, Back to the Future indeed. Fanboy pandering, CGI-driven rehash of pop culture faves. That DeLorean was a lemon, folks. Yuck, 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 yuck.
I mean, like all DeLoreans were lemons. They were just terribly put together cars. Like, can we just start with that?
It's not wrong.
I mean, they're just not well-designed automobiles. Okay, first of all, Mr. New Yorker, you should return your paycheck. Like, why do you people pay this man? I have to imagine this is like the Office Space argument for keeping someone on payroll. He was supposed to have been fired like in 1942, but the paperwork got lost in HR, and now he's been collecting a paycheck for the past 40 years. No, this is clearly not someone who's all that good at their job.
Yeah, I don't know what that tells me other than like, oh,
the New Yorker
that boring of a person.
The New Yorker is toilet paper, and has been for like 20 years.
Are you sure it's not the shit on the toilet paper? Maybe.
No, because that at one point had nutritional value. That's at least the remnants of something that was useful.
We hate you, New Yorker. We hate you. All right.
Really, if it didn't suck, I wouldn't hate it, but it kind of sucks.
All right, go ahead, Sean. Thank you for joining us, Sean, in our 10 minutes of hate here. Anytime you feel the urge, you're more than welcome to join us back. Go ahead. Why don't you tell the people where they can find your stuff and what you do?
Well, I predominantly host podcasts, produce podcasts on WTM Network. I do at least 3 a week and 4 when football is in season, which is about to be in season again because the draft is coming soon. So I do a wrestling one. If you like professional wrestling, go find it, Wrestling to the Max. I have a video games one, Video Games to the Max. We do the news, games we're reviewing, all that kind of stuff. And a Soccer to the Max that we do twice a week, talking about things going on in American soccer. Because there's millions of European soccer ones, and I don't live in Europe, so it would be stupid for me to do something on that from this side of the pond. And yeah, go visit WTMnet.com as well, where we post these guys' wonderful work as well as everybody else's, and we have game reviews and things like that. So thank you for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime. Speaking of wrestling to the max, March is over, and so is our week-to-week coverage of the movies on Damn You Hollywood. We've only got one for the month of April, and that'll be Rampage, which will be airing late April 17th. In the meantime, a week from tonight, It'll be a TV party tonight for WrestleMania weekend. The Radulich and Broadcasting Network will deign to dip its toe into the worldwide wacky world of professional wrestling. We'll talk about the Hall of Fame. We'll talk about NXT, New Orleans.
It's a weak class this year, the Hall of Fame.
Aw, but Hillbilly Jim. And we'll talk about WrestleMania 34, the christening of Roman Reigns, take 2. This time
Again.
we really mean it.
Oh, Lord.
Take 8. Let's be very clear about this. This is not take 2.
Take
This
20.
This is at least the 4th attempt to make him into that.
This is the
And it
second
will go
time.
down just as good as the other ones.
This time you won't have Seth Rollins to help him out. This is the second time at WrestleMania he'll be, christened the man, unfortunately. So, anyway, we'll talk about that Tuesday night. It'll be myself, probably Ronnie Adams, probably Jesse Starcher, maybe even Robert Winfree. Anybody else that's wanting to come on and talk wrestling with us.
Deeply unlikely.
Maybe we'll get a casual hero or two. One never knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men. So that's
It's
Tuesday.
all the evil. Seriously, all of the evil.
As I said, the following week is our Damn You Hollywood review of the best movie of the year. It hasn't even come out yet, but I'm telling you it's the best. It's Rampage. It's the greatest movie ever based on a video game. It's The Rock. It's giant monsters tearing down a city. What more could you love, America? We're going to follow that up with a pair of...
Only like half of that was accurate.
Every single thing was accurate.
Not the best movie.
It's so good.
Not the best movie based on a video game.
We're going to have two...
To be fair, that's a really short list.
Yes, it is.
We'll have 2 TV party tonights the following week. We'll have one for the DC's Legends of Tomorrow, which has been really great this season. This I'm being sincere about. It's been absolutely phenomenal. And then we're going to hit you twice with a Netflix TV party tonight, Lost in Space. And then that takes us into
be on
May.
that one.
So far, me and Jesse, but you if you want.
Let me see it, and then I'll decide if I think there's anything worth commenting on.
Fantastic.
I like how he
I-
wants to be on before he's seen the thing.
No, I don't. Like, I that's why I asked. Like, if you had volunteered me for that,
I wrote
like,
your name in.
I
It's
will-
fine.
I am prepared. Again, like, let me see it and then decide if I feel like commenting on it because
No.
I might not.
You need to gear up, cowboy up, whatever it is you need to do, because the following week is Avengers: Infinity War. Well, I'm sure it'll be a fun show.
I am so prepared to be the only man on the hill saying, "No, here's all the problems with this," as the mobs converge on me.
Anyway, as for this week, it's all video games all the time. Yesterday, our ode to video games and comic books, we looked at the first 6 issues of Year 1 of Injustice: Gods Among Us. Tomorrow, on the Metal Hammer of
It's all
Doom,
I saved you listening to the podcast. It's all right.
you should listen to the podcast anyway, and don't listen to this jerk. Go ahead and check out our Metal Hammer of Doom review tomorrow of Power Glove, Metal Combat for the Mortal Man. It's the very first Power Glove album. And finally, assuming Sean is not on Twitch or otherwise engaged elsewhere in the world, we'll be doing an on-trial for the movie Tron. Not Tron Legacy, the original 80s picture from Walt Disney, Tron.
Such a good movie.
Yes, I just rewatched it. I don't know if I'm prosecuting or defending. I haven't bothered to look yet. But we're doing one of those two things.
This is one of those movies when it's incredibly easy to take either position. Like,
Yeah.
Whichever stance you wind up taking, it's really not hard to put forth a case.
I tried to get my kids to sit down and watch that one, and I lost my daughter early on, and my son boy after my own heart, he liked the light cycle scene. After that, he was kind of
Who doesn't like the light cycle scene? That's like the coolest part of me.
Exactly. I gotta tie him to a chair and make him watch Flash Gordon next. But that's another show for another time.
Don't torture your child.
Gordon on a rocket cycle? But Flash, I love you. Such a great movie.
It's the worst. It is so bad.
You're the worst.
It's like ironically bad, like so bad it's good.
Dude, him throwing ceramic watermelons at people to knock them out is the greatest thing. Like footballs is the greatest thing ever. Go Flash,
The
go!
whole
Go Flash,
flying
go!
Jet ski.
Flying blind on a rocket cycle? So good.
It's just a jet ski.
Flash! Ah! He'll save everyone.
You know,
of
the
us.
song
Yeah.
is great.
I mean, the theme song.
In all fairness, the song is great.
Yeah.
I love Flash Gordon. We're
This does not surprise me in the least. And speaks.
who doesn't want to, be wearing a tight T-shirt that has your name on it that says Flash while you throw ceramic watermelons at people? I do.
You know, I'm gonna pass.
Oh.
I'm just kind of gonna pass on that one. If I'm throwing ceramic watermelons at people, I really don't want to have my name emblazoned across my chest for easy identification.
The
so that I
best
can
part
be
of this is
easily identified.
to this day, I remember the sound effect of the watermelons bouncing off the guards. Boing! And they'd fall over. It's fantastic. And then there's Dale on the side next to Hans Zarkov. Go, Flash, go! Go, Flash, go! Good stuff. There'll eventually be a Radulich and broadcasting commentary on it, but not today. All right. You, Robert Winfree, you. Tell them about your show.
On Sunday, Jeff Harris and I previewed UFC 223 on the 411 Ground and Pound radio show. Our show went live about 20 minutes after the news broke that Tony Ferguson was out of the main event and that Max Holloway would be stepping in. So you can listen to Jeff's minor meltdown trying to go through the stages of grief as that fight falls through for the fourth time. It's really one of the I was okay with it because I did not expect that fight to actually happen. That fight is cursed, and I can live with that. So we actually previewed the fight we did get instead, which is featherweight champion Max Holloway moving up on 6 days' notice to lightweight to fight for some variation of the lightweight title. It's deeply unclear.
Did we say we were stripping him? Did we say we were stripping him? Next question,
no, but
please.
he did say he's stripping Tony Ferguson of his.
Terrific. Well, we're not stripping Conor McGregor of his. Next question.
They will as soon as the first punch is thrown in the cage.
Next.
I think Khabib actually had the right perspective on this. I think I think it was Ariel Helwani asked him, this is kind of crazy. Why have they not stripped Conor? And his response was because there has to be a champion. If they strip Conor and then Max gets hurt or Max misses weight and then wins, then there is literally no lightweight champion.
Yeah, those belts are almost as worth as those belts have almost as much worth as a WWE title at this point.
How ironic.
In terms of perception, yes. In terms of actual value to the fighter, not even. Somebody did a statistical analysis of fighter pay. And if you are a champion, be that interim or otherwise, you make on average 120% more than you did before you were said champion.
Okay, well, the first one's the one I was talking about.
Perceptionally, the UFC has allowed that division to become a mess because they won't just strip Conor McGregor despite him not fighting in MMA in 500 days. More than that at this point.
Thank God they don't have that WWE 30-day rule.
Waka waka. Well, you know what the UFC needs? Jack Tunney. He'll fix it all. All right.
Could you imagine?
Look, man, when Dana retires in the next 5 years because he's just done with all this, you could do worse than Jack Tunney.
All right, take us home, sir. Take us home.
Last thing. Just this coming Sunday, we will review UFC 223 and preview UFC on Fox 29. We lost the co-main event, which was supposed to be Matt Brown and Carlos Condit. Matt Brown got injured.
I feel so bad for you because you were so happy.
No.
You never sounded as happy as you heard.
The main event. Hang on. There's two things about this. A, they actually have a replacement for Condit to fight. I forget who it is, but I believe they do have somebody. And the main event is still intact. And if that falls apart, God help us all. But I still have the possibility of Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje and the violence they will inflict on each other. Because, oh boy, that's a fight and a half. I mean, I'm shocked that's on Fox. There's going to be so much blood. So much blood. So you can hear us again, review UFC 223 and preview the upcoming Fox card. And I think that's it for the immediate future. Again, I will not be here next week for the TV party that they're doing. But I will be back for, again, Rampage when that's out, and for Infinity War when that's out. And just kind of generally, I'll be here for Damn You Hollywood.
All summer long, baby doll. All summer long. It is the winter of Robert Winfree's discontent.
I mean, the supreme irony is that it's not all summer long. It's like a week and then a 2.5-week break.
Yeah.
It's staggered in weird ways.
That's okay. 2019 will more than make it up to you.
No, it won't. It really won't.
If you think this year I inflicted a lot of pain on you, wait till you see the 2019 calendar. It starts in January. You don't get a break.
Have you already penciled in Gambit every other week until it actually gets released?
Yeah, Gambit's on standby, yes. But, yeah.
Never getting
normally you get a break in January, but I've got a movie pass, and they've got movies we got to see, so you don't get a break. Ha, ha, ha.
Just for the sake of my own, like, quasi... I mean, there's plenty of time for your schedule for 2019 to fall completely apart.
Oh, do you want to know what's happening in January of 2019? Do you want to know what horrors await you?
There's Hellboy, which I'm actually kind of looking forward to.
All right. Damn you. So, New Year's Day, we'll have our review of Bumblebee, followed by Mary Poppins Returns.
I'm still not convinced I'm not convinced I'm going to actually see Bumblebee.
No, you used your one get out of jail free card, and it was for Barbie, and then they moved it.
No, Barbie's not happening.
No, it just moved to another year. All right,
so I have.
Why are
you
watching the Barbie movie?
It's a franchise movie. That's why. All right, so we have. So January has Bumblebee.
Wait, why are we reviewing Mary Poppins?
Disney, Hellboy, and Glass.
Not an effective. We're reviewing Glass.
Yes, I've already told you this.
God damn it! I'm not seeing the Lego Movie sequel.
Do I have that penciled in?
I assume.
Yeah, it's because the stupid Sony, what do you call it? Silver and Black got axed, so we're doing that one instead.
I'm not entirely sure I will see that. I hated the first one.
You've already said you're not seeing Barbie. You used up your one get out of jail free card. All right, let's get out of here.
Dark Phoenix is gonna suck. How to Train Your Dragon 3 is probably gonna suck. I'm just deeply ambivalent about Captain Marvel. Well, the Godzilla movie's coming out.
Yes, I got a whole week of stuff planned for that.
We have the crappy Shazam adaptation. That's going to go so badly.
Dumbo.
Robert Downey Jr. playing Dr. Dolittle.
Yep.
The voice cast for that looks awesome, though.
It really does.
Pet Sematary.
You're probably gonna make me see Detective Pikachu, aren't you?
Oh hell yeah, that's penciled in. But don't forget about.
I need to be on for that.
I will absolutely not see that movie.
Yes, you will.
I will take a moral stance on that one.
There's a remake of Pet Sematary.
I saw them.
John Wick
Chapter 3.
Aladdin.
Well, that might be interesting.
The $6 Billion Man, Charlie's Angels, because
no. Don't put the $6 Billion Man on there. Just don't.
It's on there. Charlie's Angels, because Secret Life of Pets seems to have gone away after the whole scandal thing. Son of Shaft, Toy Story, Cowboy Ninja Viking.
No Son of Shaft.
Yes, Son of Shaft. Absolutely Son of Shaft.
No.
Spider-Man 2, Top Gun 2.
Executives. June has 5 movies. Put something on the 14th. Anything.
This is what you've been reduced to begging. That's what's happened here.
No.
I have a whole...
This is not me begging for my own sanity. This is like, seriously, the only thing scheduled to be released is an ass movie.
I have a whole week of...
Sean
Garmer, I have a whole week of podcasts planned for you to share on the Wrestling to the Max network. We've got source material dedicated to a Shaft comic, a Damn You Hollywood review of Son of Shaft, and an on-trial of the Samuel L. Jackson Shaft movie. Isn't that exciting?
I like that Samuel Jackson Shaft movie.
There we go.
I was also, like, much younger at the time.
So let's end this podcast before Robert Winfree walks into traffic.
I know, we get it Chapter 2 next year.
And maybe I'll see that one. Maybe there won't be a hurricane.
No. You will conjure another hurricane.
I will. I didn't conjure the last one, god damn it.
Wait, is Jason Momoa seriously set to star in a Crow reboot?
Yep, that's on the calendar.
Oh, well, that has got ruined.
Who thinks this is a good idea?
There's The Kitchen, that's on the calendar. Everest, that's a rock movie, that's on the calendar. Yeah, The Crow, I put that on the calendar. Wonder Woman, Bond, Sonic the Hedgehog, Star Wars, and
just say Frozen 2, and I will just be sad.
Star Wars, He-Man, and Wicked are all on the calendar.
Oh god, that Sonic movie is gonna be ass.
There's just there's very little good next year.
Oh, I can't wait.
I might quit.
No! You can't quit.
Why not?
You enjoy this too much. All right, end the goddamn
Not
show already.
that much. I don't enjoy it that much. So hopefully, studio executives look at 2019 and realize, oh, there's all these places we can make better. Listen, look at Mark's schedule, and I want you to wreck it.
Like Ralph.
I just want his effort to be rendered null and void.
Which you have
For
a
the
ton of time to
majority
do
of
so,
that.
by the way.
All right. On that note, me wishing for the demise of Mark's efforts. That's going to wrap us up for this evening. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Hope you enjoy the movies. And until next time, please continue to be well, be safe, and behave.
Jamie, Progressive's Employee of the Month, 2 months in a row. Leave a message at the... Hi, Jamie. It's me, Jamie. I just had a new idea for our song about the Name Your Price tool. So when it's like, tell us what you want to pay, hey, 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 and the trombone goes, blah, 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 and you say, we'll help you find coverage options to fit your budget. Then we just all do finger snaps while a choir goes, savings coming at ya, savings coming at ya. Yes? No? Maybe? Anyway, see you practice tonight. I got new lyrics for the rap break.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.